us to our database.
The knowledge and experience is still in the living.
Yeah. But it's not experience that makes a difference.
I had an incident in California, and we needed to make entry to Town Hall. One of the employees said, I asked him, he said, what's your training course?
Okay, thank you. My name is April Lane. I'm a senior ECA. My major is public relations and communications. I'm also director of a local nonprofit, arkansasfracking.org, and I serve as project director on the Faulkner County Bucket Brigade. So we did some of the independent airline training in Mayflower and have conducted airline training in the Fayetteville Shale area. And then I'm a board member on the Faulkner County Citizens Advisory Group. So what I'm here to talk about today, we've had a lot of good discussion, a lot of questions. We went over some of the material we discussed before. Is we know that there are a lot of problems. We know that our response is severely lacking, and that how we address these types of incidents needs to be addressed not just by the state agencies and by the companies who are responsible, but as a community. So I want to talk to you a little bit today about something that I've been working on for about, feels like a lifetime, about a year. And this came out of many, many discussions with Charlotte Patton from Coming Clean and Wilma Subra and Emily Harris and a lot of us who were trying to figure out, how can we give the community a resource of some kind to be able to try to address these types of spills and their exposures. So what I'm going to talk to you about is called the IVAN model. I'm going to give you a little bit of history of the IVAN model, but IVAN stands for Innovation, Value, Access, and Networking. So since 2010, the community-based IVAN model has been really responsible for building government and civic partnerships. So it's not just about providing the community with a resource, but it's about building these long-lasting networks between your government, because as much as we complain about them, they're not going away. We're going to have to deal with them. We're going to have to address this issue together. So it connects regulators directly to the community. This actually was born in like the 1960s. The idea of it was born. And when you think of the term environmental justice, a lot of you probably heard of this term. What do you think about when you hear that term? Well, you think about somebody who's been impacted by an environmental incident that has had their life disrupted in a manner that actually incapacitates them to be able to proceed with their life in a positive way. So once that term was defined, and that's an EPA term, it is defined as fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental policies. So this is achieved when you actually get to enjoy the same degree of protection from environmental and health harms and equal access to the decision-making process. So that's what's ultimately happened here in Mayflower and in other areas, is that you've been denied as community members participation in that decision-making process. So in 2007, the Department of California's EPA, Department of Toxic Substances Control, they drafted an environmental justice enforcement initiative that was an unprecedented approach to direct environmental injustices. Gail Filter was the deputy director of the Enforcement and Emergency Response and led the execution of this initiative. So this was really born out of the feedback they were getting from the community, but this was actually, formed by the agencies themselves, which is great. Their objectives were to engage the community residents who had been ignored, to establish ongoing relationships and build public trust, to invite residents and environmental justice organizations to show government the environmental harms they were experiencing, and to listen and encourage community perspectives in that participation. They also wanted to serve as a facilitator. So they wanted to be that facilitator between the government and the community, which is really what your state agency's jobs are to do, is to be a facilitator on your behalf. FCCAG has actually picked that responsibility up in the last couple of years and tried to kind of fill that void. So their last goal was to, within 100 days, provide residents and groups with results of investigations, testing, regulatory action, and begin a regular and ongoing dialogue of information sharing and efforts and enforcement. So their big goal is what our goal is, to bridge that gap, to make that gap between agency and government and the community smaller so that there's dialogue consistently occurring. So they did this by hosting some toxic tours by bus. They went to several different counties: Imperial County, East Oakland, Wilmington, which is they're actually getting ready to launch their database in February. And I'm actually going to be going out there to kind of see that launch and kind of meet with some of the community members, meet with some of the state agencies and see how they successfully built that relationship in an equitable way. There's several other ones, but 4 of those communities they visited ended up adopting this platform. It's free. It was an open source platform to harness information. The tools are adaptable, so you can get information collection and visualization with the maps, interactive mapping, so that you can go back and see, what has actually been updated. So there's 2 parts to this database. One is that it serves as a reporting tool. The second is that it serves as a way to implement a task force in your area. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But Imperial Valley actually developed the first task force. Ivan was actually legitimately established in 2008 following those bus tours. And the environmental justice advocates adopted the platform in 2010 as a model that we can actually spread and use in other areas. So how is the reporting structured? I'm actually going to go ahead and look to the map for a second. This is actually going to take you through and show you some of the steps. So this is the real-time mapping. Mapping with Ivan is done as soon as a report is generated. So as soon as you log on and you actually fill your report out, you can make it anonymous, you can put your name, your information in, it's whatever you're comfortable with as a resident. It gives you a clear indication where the problems are located geographically, and then they use Google's hybrid satellite imagery to be able to easily pinpoint within minutes. And you can filter these results, so you can actually take this and collect your data. You can filter it by category, time, location. You can isolate your reports. You can overlay layers of data. You can zoom in and out, all those nice features. In your detailed reports, you can actually look at those from the front end of the reporting system. So this allows for others to report additional details on incidental incidents. So say you have a compressor station explode and you have a lot of reports generated from that. The person who generates the report can actually go back in and continue logging what they're experiencing. So instead of you as an individual having to keep your own journal, for instance, which for some reason it's almost nearly impossible for me to get residents to keep thorough journals, you can actually use this tool and actually just log on and keep updating it. You can also filter this by category and type. You can upload photos, videos. You can rate and comment on reports. So if you live in a neighborhood that's been affected by something, you can actually get on there and rate what you think the response has been. Put comments on the report, so you can look at a report that someone else has actually submitted, and then you can add something to that report, which is really helpful to put pieces of the puzzle together and form that big picture of what's actually happening, what is the community actually experiencing. When you submit reports, it was built to allow for the ability to report on environmental issues. It's simple to use. Reporting only takes a couple of minutes, so a lot of people think that, have a misunderstanding that, well, this is going to take a lot of time. It actually doesn't. It's very, very easily navigable. It's quick. You can fill out an online form. You can fill it out. You can do it by your phone. That detailed information is what we're lacking. So that's hopefully what this will actually fill. It'll fill that gap. Your personal information can be private, or you can actually list your name if you don't want it to be private. Real-time location, and then again, you can add your photos and videos. You can also get alerts. So you can get alerts right to your phone. So if you have another spill, hopefully, Lord willing, that will never occur, but you will actually be able to get alerts that says, and you can choose your categories and decide what do you want to be informed about. If you've had a release at a compressor station, if there's been, a train derailment, what have you, what kind of alerts do you want to be sent? So it's kind of similar to the Smart 911 program, the alerts that we get to our phones. And then working on a special project, if you want to pull data off there, so if you're a public health professional, if you want to try to, and this is by no means all-encompassing. This is not a comprehensive health database, so let me not confuse you. This is a reporting tool. Now, eventually, we as a community can grow this database into whatever we see fit. But initially, the history of this program has been to launch it as a reporting tool and to make it easily available to people in the community. But you would be able to download files, choose your category by time, date, and then pull that information off there. So if you want to see how many people got on and submitted a report on a given situation, you can pull that data. And then they're actually working on right now, launching this year an app. So you can actually call in from a landline, you can do it from your smartphone, email, text message. The point of that is to make it accessible. We know that there are a lot of areas, it's rural areas, not everybody has the internet, not everybody has access to being able to log on. So trying to make it as easily accessible to people as we can. And then support and training. Island partners get specialized training and support by developing their crowd mapping project. Services include hosting, maintenance, email, web design. It's reliable hosting. You can look at resource videos so they can actually train people. So this is another way for, as a community to be able to upload additional training and information videos, such as if you want to educate people on PTSD and they need to have a resource that they can go to. If you want to educate people on the exposure of benzene and air monitoring and what they should be looking for, you can upload these types of things. And then web design maintenance. So the Environmental Justice Enforcement Task Force. So this is the big overarching idea that this database is kind of meant to try to, really advocate for is to form a task force. So community government partnerships, having monthly meetings. Not every single one of these databases has monthly meetings. Every community has decided how they want to actually craft it. So some of them meet once every 3 months, some of them meet once every 6 months. And then they do a lot of their conversing by email and text and all those great ways. So this also, it's a way to make sure that we're encouraging transparency and accountability. And not just from the government and the state agencies, but also encouraging the community to really be transparent with their experience as well. And really being vocal about how they've been impacted, because that's really ultimately the way we learn about what these spills do, is if we are vocal about it and if we have all the information. And then supplemental environmental projects, which vary from county to county that this has been done in. So after Imperial Valley developed their first task force and they launched their tour buses and they had that really good connection with their state agencies and with the people they wanted involved in their task force, they decided to kind of look at how are they going to actually promote that transparency and accountability. So they actually ended up looking at putting 3 people in distinct positions. One is a government chair, so you have someone from the government who is going to be a chair on this task force. Then you have a community chair, so somebody in the community who is, very highly respected and who is a part of that integrated community. And then a government problem solver, which is somebody from one of your state agencies who actually will look at the problems and report those to your government chair, and then will help be that facilitator for the other government agencies so that you don't spend all of your time trying to make those networking and that connection. So that it's important to have, everybody needs to have an equal stakeholder in this process. So in some of these cases, the way they crafted their task force was 20% of the task force members are public agencies. in order to maintain that transparency and make sure that the community had an equal, and this isn't gonna sound equal, but at least an equal share, they actually adopted 80% of their task force as community members. Some of those community members were former agency workers, some of them, were current employees that just weren't in upper management positions, that just had some expertise. And this report was actually, after they launched these task forces, about 5 years afterwards, they actually had someone from public health come in and actually do a study on the effectiveness of the task force, how they implemented it, how it was structured, and was it an equal distribution of representation. And they actually found that it was, even though on the surface it looked like government and public agencies didn't have enough participation, they offset that by the resources and by the accessibility to resources. So community members making up a larger portion of the task force was what was needed, since the whole goal of this is to be able to put an actual definition of what people in the community were experiencing. So, this is something that I think is extremely beneficial for not only people in Mayflower, but people in the Fayetteville Shell area. It's going to at least start a conversation. We've been trying to start this conversation for many years now, but providing an actual networking site / regular meetings for them to attend. Not that we haven't done that. We've been holding these meetings for almost a year now. And then Emily Harris and Dirk and other members of SCCG were holding them long before that. But having something that they can tangibly put their fingers on, and we can touch, we can feel it, we can actually have something tangible in our hands to work on, I think is probably going to be our best avenue for moving forward, in my opinion, to try to be able to start figuring out how do these environmental disasters affect our communities, and how do we as community members start addressing our agencies appropriately and do it in a way where we're engaging them to enter into that conversation, knowing that they are going to have an equal stake in it as well. And I just feel like after all my communications with our state agencies that this is the best I can come up with as far as finding something that will give them the ability to sit at the table and actually have conversations that somewhere, hopefully one day actually go somewhere with action and with legislation and with regulation. So, do you have any questions?
What government agency people have you spoken with, or did you have in mind?
I have spoken with a few. I've spoken with the Health Department about this, with Dr. Mason, mentioned the idea to him a long time ago. We have not sat down and really specifically went over the details, mainly because I hadn't had the funding acquired for this. It's, when I say that it's free, I mean that you as a community member, once this is established, it's free to you.
Yeah.
It's not free to get off the ground, that's for sure. So once we have the rest of our kind of ducks in a row, and we've pretty much gotten them, but I'm going to be going out to California to look at the launching of the database in Wilmington. And I want to see what, it's not been perfect. These databases have worked well, and they have really brought that connection between agencies and the public really to the front and center of these communities. But I want to know what didn't work. What did work, what didn't work, I don't want to, try to continue with this project and make any of the same mistakes that they've made. So I'm doing a lot of talking with the program directors of some of these other databases to try to find that out and exactly what it is. But the health department, ADQ, Office of Emergency Management, those are your kind of like, pretty much the unified command. Like, you want the people who are going to be reacting to these incidents to be at the table in your discussions. Now, who it might be, I don't know.
I thought I'd like to work with you on this.
Yeah.
Whatever time I have available.
Absolutely. Anybody, everybody. And I know Emily Harris's son, he's wanting to be involved in this, and is going to have some GIS, the GIS degree. So yeah, this is
Eventually I'll have GIS.
yeah.
So.
And even if you're not, even, I'll try to tell people that no matter if you end up wanting to, a lot of people don't want to necessarily be on a task force, and that's fine too, but I want to encourage everybody, no matter what role you want to take, to be involved to some extent, whether it's because, a project like this is very long-term. It's literally great. Hopefully it'll be around long after I'm dead. But it's going to take a lot of communicating to the communities that this is even available to them. And so it really is going to be all hands on deck. We're going to need everybody to really make sure that this is successful and that we can actually have this be what is going to be most beneficial to people. So anybody that wants to be involved at all, let me know.
How long do you think it will take to get off the ground for Arkansas? Gotcha.
Well, ideally, I would love to see it around the 1-year anniversary of the Mayflower spill.
And how much money needs to be raised to do so?
We already got the money.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got the money now. It's not for like the next 50 years, but we've got the money to get it off the ground and to actually launch it.
Okay.
So depending on the task force members and who is willing to participate, hopefully they all will be willing to participate. I do want to get lots of feedback from the residents of Mayflower, as well as I've gotten a lot of feedback from some of the residents in Fayetteville Shale as far as who they would like to see as representatives for their communities. Because this isn't going to be just specifically for Mayflower, it is going to be for the Fayetteville Shale as well, since we have these two massive energy extractions occurring really simultaneously.
Yeah.
And then the fallout from them occurring simultaneously.
And will it include South Arkansas from the one drilling in the brown pits or no?
Not initially.
Not initially?
No. Because
Right.
the last thing I want to do is bite off more than
Right.
we can chew. And there'll be moderators so that it's
Good.
not when you get on and you make your report, and I forgot to mention this, but when you get on and fill out your report doesn't just automatically go and get logged into the database. It goes to moderators, and those moderators are going to be people who are really well experienced with oil and gas issues, and they're actually going to be able to look at those reports, make sure that, like for instance, if somebody says, well, my neighbor's burning, some stuff, and that would generate a report, but we want to make sure that the reports that get generated are legitimate reports.
And how many GIS students do you need?
I actually don't need any right now.
Okay.
But in the future, probably 1 to 3 would be nice.
Okay, Brianna North. Think we could get her?
Yeah.
A couple other people?
Yeah, we're working on that right now.
We have a couple of friends of ours that are in the geology program working the GIS certificates.
Yeah.
So they've gotten the intro course and all, they did one
that's
other
great.
course, but.
And there's so much information that when, we do need to do so much research. Like, I can't say that enough, that we need to do research on our water wells continually. In Mayflower and the Fayetteville Shale, we need to do research on our water treatment plants. We need to do research on our public water. There's, me and Emily Harris could just talk all day long about just how much research needs to be done to really identify what the impact is to people. And so, long-term, as many people who want to do research on anything.
I can talk to Dr. McMillan too, if you need some help with the GIS people and see if she can drum up some students for us. So
Great.
don't let me fix Dr. Bethel.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? I'm also,
I have just a really general question. I missed the very beginning of this, and I apologize for that. I got a call when I was out here.
Okay.
But if I put that into a search engine, will it spit something out that has more material on what it is?
Yeah, you can
and How it's
actually,
used and that sort of
you
thing?
can pull data off the database, like you as an individual. You can pull data off the database, so you can actually put in time.
I guess what I'm asking, and let me rephrase that a little bit, is not so much about the use of it, but what it's for and how one participates in it and all that other stuff.
Yeah, there's a website you can go to right now, called ivanonline.org.
Okay.
And you can actually go and look at some of the databases that they've already kind of established that are up and running. Some of them will look different, some of them aren't going to be called Ivan. It's up to the community to decide if they want to stick with Ivan or if they want to make their own name. It's really, that's what I love most about it. It's versatile. You craft it to the needs of your community.
Oh, that's great.
So yeah, you can go to that website and look at some very detailed information.
And I'll ask you one more question that's more specific to what you've talked about. And what kind of escaped me, and it may be because I missed stuff or I'm getting tired. But how all of this is tagged such that you know where you're going and what you're reporting on and how it connects to other things that may be related to it. That part kind of escaped me.
When you say tag, do you mean like, so deciphering between the Mayflower spill versus
Yeah, like that.
natural
So,
gas issue?
Let's say someone in the Fayetteville Shell feels an earthquake and they're going to go in there and write something. Well, as we know, there are lots of places in the Fayetteville Shell that are having wells drilled, and I'm sure there's plenty of injection wells up there too. How would we know that was, where to put that with respect to what well or what it's connected to? I mean,
Well, that's where your additional research comes in. So say, for instance, you start seeing a cluster of reports popping up around an injection well, and people are feeling tremors.
So if someone was going to make a thing, you would simply put it in, say it has maybe to do with the Fayetteville Shale and something that general, and then it would get more specific with
Yeah, I
the
mean, it's
case.
gonna ask you, what have you, so you'll put it in pretty much just like our pollution logs. What do you hear, feel, smell? What has your experience been? I mean, we want you to be as detailed as you can. So
Or
it's
you-
probably not, we don't necessarily want somebody to put a one-liner of, I felt an earthquake today. But that's why we get those reports generated to moderators first. Because we are going to look at those and make sure that this is it detailed and and where is it located on the interactive map? Are they located near an injection well?
Gotcha. So there's a specify where you are. And
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's an
Yeah,
interactive
okay.
map, so it's like kind of like Google Earth. You can use it. That's a pretty good way to summarize it.
Thank you, April, for all your hard work.
Sweet Jesus, because you're killing me here. I want to know what the heck this is.
Well, I'm excited, and April's presentation was perfectly in for mine. Sure. Yeah, because I'm going to run through them pretty fast. Some of them are too wordy, but.
leave my clicker in there.
Oh, cool, good.
That's my baby.
Oh, they get so big so fast. And I've got way too much crap on that one.
All right, now we found it.
Mayflower
10.
Town Hall 10. Say it right there.
No.
There, where? Right there, yeah. Okay. Obviously, it's been a minute. I put this slide in here, it didn't come out really well, but this really shows that we all have to be working together in a combined effort to make the progress that we do. And you've heard me say this a number of times. This is also the same model that's relied upon heavily by the Arkansas Department of Health. I'm going to talk about that in a minute too. And I just stuck this in because it was part of what we talked about earlier too, this tilt syndrome. Not everybody's affected the same way. Not everybody's symptoms are going to be the same way. Someone who's already had chronic disease, they have a worsening of that chronic disease but have no cognizance that has anything related to do with their exposures. So, based on that rapid community health assessment that Genevieve and I did, and those details that support that, we came up with a conclusion that the potential for 92.5% of those neighborhood homes have the potential to be affected. So sharing that information has got us a little bit of attention. So the pilot study worked as it was supposed to, yay. And so, you remember Dr. Mason, when he spoke at the Hendricks, he clearly stated his concerns about the likelihood of a significant mental health issue such as PTSD having a detrimental effect on Mayflower community. And, obviously the information that we've heard today, thank you, Dr. Rose, for sharing that with me. And he encouraged that UMAS establish that center of excellence. And he really established his concern to the threat to Lake Maumelle watershed and the potential to affect such a large percentage of the population. So even though oftentimes I know it must feel like we're alone and nobody's paying attention, I think the greater ripples in the pool that this has caused and continues to cause with the information about the intention to reopen the pipeline does have people's intentions, except they just don't know how to go forward. So we need to help them with that, right?
Yes.
They provided us with this individual assessment in answer to our request for the community health assessment. And I just wanted to ask, has anybody had any follow-up off of that? You did?
I did get my letter back from them, and I was actually very pleased with the way that he stated everything in there.
Okay.
I
Well,
wish I
because they
had-
told me that they were going to be doing letters, but I've not received mine, so I don't know.
Well, it took a while for mine to get to me because of course it said it's Mayflower, which I told them, we don't live here in Warren.
Okay.
But anyway, I eventually got it at my P.O. box, it was forwarded to me. And it was, he went through everything, he had some stuff not correct, which I said to my attorneys. but
Expectable,
It
yeah.
was very, very good.
Okay, because I had asked them specifically whether or not there would be a report of the aggregated data about how many people they saw and what they had seen that was expectable or not expectable and what the outcome of that was. And they kind of hemmed and hawed. I didn't get a real clear answer. They said that there were plans, but they didn't have any idea when they were going to be carried out. So I'm glad to hear that you got your letter, but I'm still waiting for mine. But Hometown Health Improvement, which is the organizational structure umbrella that Clark County Citizens Advisory Group is organized under, clearly states that some of the resources that they offer to the community include these community health surveys and community health assessments. So we have been, I hate to say aggressively, but aggressively pursuing the need for a community health assessment here in Faulkner County related to not only the Mayflower incident, but for the Fayetteville show. So, here is an example of some of the data that's collected, and here is one data point that might be helpful to us. The trend is available years over time. You establish the baseline, and you can see where we've gone and where we are now based on some of these environmental exposures. And so this is just one data point. The adults with asthma. But I'm very pleased to announce that I had a meeting at the health department earlier this week, and they have determined that they will send the resources that we have been authorized and approved to schedule the planning meeting to draw together the key leaders of the community to start this process to complete the county health assessment that we've been asking for. They had originally assigned the responsibility to another HHI coalition in the community that hasn't met in over 2 years. Go figure. So following our in-person meeting, I do have the director of HHI agreeing that if we will put together the meeting date and meeting times, that they will support our efforts and that they will apply the resources that are available through the Department of Health to help us complete the countywide community health assessment.
All right.
You've
I've been trying to do that for 3 years now, haven't I?
Yes.
So congratulations.
Now, this is only part of my good news.
Oh, God.
There's more.
Yay. All right.
What? We got accepted.
Shut up.
Yay! Do the happy dance. The official agenda comes out on the 24th. Mayflower will be on it. I titled the abstract Catch-22 and started with the definition of a Catch-22 about how the situation, the rules are created by those who have the tendency to benefit and those that are affected have no say. So that's what they accepted us on. These are the people that support it. There'll be the major federal agencies will all be there with representation, plus a number of academic institutions send their students so that they can also benefit from this. But how is this? Okay, free to community organizations. If you will apply for the scholarship, well, first of all, your registration's fee, if you'll get on there and apply now. You'll apply for the scholarship, they pay for your transportation and housing. I have 20 minutes. Anybody that wants to come with me and share that 20 minutes, y'all pack your little bags and come on. Because we're going.
I'm coming.
We're going.
When is this?
26th to 28th.
Yes,
Washington,
and we have like one of the premier spots. We're in the middle day, right before like the keynote speaker.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
I'll be there. I'll
You
go
are.
with you. Been there once,
I'm
I'll go
looking to
again.
see when spring break is, because I have a trip on spring break.
It's the week after spring break
Well,
because
then I'm
the
going.
universities have to be back in session because they attend. But, you know, maybe you could get permission to go as a student.
Yeah. I'm gonna contact, yeah, okay. Well, let me figure talk to Dr. Rule about this.
Absolutely.
Seriously, man, so done.
Oh, so
If it wasn't
that's
for her, I'd lose my head. If it wasn't for her, I'd lose my head.
I was trying to go back to that one.
Oh, hey, can you hit X1?
March 26th to the 28th, and it's where?
Washington DC, and they will put you up at the Marriott. And, you know, the Metro Center there is where, shortly after the spill, the photographs, the paper towel and the oil can photographs were put up again.
Alex and everybody.
Yes, we're in the Metro Center station. So, you know, if you can't go, but you have information that you would like to see included in the presentation that day, please share with me what your thoughts are. What are the most important things that we can get talked about within 20 minutes? So, you know, there's two really big issues that we have to address. We need to set the meeting for the initial community key stakeholders to come in. It needs to be during the week, over lunch preferably. I'll contact the hospital because due to the, you know, Affordable Care Act, they have to do the community health assessment on a regular basis, so it's time for them to renew. So it's in their best interest to invest in this. I'm hoping that maybe they'll provide the meeting space and the food for an over the lunch meeting. But we need to pick a day during the week over lunch to try and get this going, like within the next 6 weeks. And, you know, if we pull everything together with the rollout of the IVA database and the 1-year anniversary, we should be able to have quite a bit of information for a media release. And,
Can I just, there you go. You do, especially.
hey, you know, it was all of us, every single one of us. Yeah.
I mean, literally every single person,
That,
especially the residents. I mean, I want to say that, you know, don't thank us.
Yeah,
You know.
because it's not about us. The pipeline didn't break in my backyard,
Yeah,
it's your backyard.
Yeah. And, you know, it's the residents.
good job, guys.
I'm excited.
I'm excited too.
I'm
I
ready to
just
go.
found out yesterday that we made the final cut.
Yes.
Wow.
To do this part of it, will I need to go into Mayflower?
To do what part?
I don't know. I mean,
It's Washington DC, dear.
but it's in the other part.
Oh, no, we can do that in Conway,
Okay,
or even Little Rock.
okay.
Probably Conway.
I just
Yeah.
don't want to
Yeah.
hinder anyone
Yeah.
by saying I'll do something and I can't go.
Okay.
Can you bring up the fact that the TTHM levels in Conway, our water supply is above?
What, oh, she's done. I didn't realize.
Dang.
Do you not have a filter?
Okay.
You need to have a filter.
Water.
You need to have a filter. You filter the back product and then disinfectant.
Yes.
And that's part of what County Health Emergency brings out is over 25%.
You were there.
No, I bought
I
water.
was
I bought water from Walmart. It's
Yeah.
no water because my daughter has neurological
Oh,
stuff.
yeah, see, we thought it was
She's
a-
had headaches for years.
It's worth an investment.
Yes, please, because that,
Absolutely. I mean, and that's why we.
Yeah, that's not a good thing.
So that we can identify those
You
issues.
said, copy pictures of it.
So I was not gonna see me for a month, because I'm going to Fayetteville for GSA, the week before the trip for the Bahamas for the class, and then be on all spring break, and then this is the week after.
Oops.
Tell her I'm sorry.
Well, we'll
You a
end up,
babysitter.
yeah. Alyssa, just show her where the axe is, she's safe.
Yeah, that's true. It's still my car. It's awesome. I have to show you. It's got my car. From Solomon. To show you.
It's a,
You have it? No, it's right here.
No, I was just kidding, she said.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm holding it out. I think
So it was cold the first week of January.
So myself, my name is Alyssa Martinez. I'm a student at University of Arkansas at Little Rock. I'm doing undergraduate research on the spill. Do I need to get this way? I met her the first week
The Oilspill.
Yeah, at the first Town Hall. And ever since then, I've annoyed the heck out of her as much as possible. Well, we went out, this is what, the 8th?
The 8th of January.
The Cove was frozen over for the most part, except for right in the middle, and certain areas where I had fallen through. But it was really cold. There was about 4 inches of ice near the shoreline, and about 2 inches majority of everywhere else.
We could actually, it was thick enough to where we could actually walk out into this, to break holes into the ice, to be able to see what you can't see when there's ice on the ground. We were out there trying to figure out what happens when the air is cold. What happens to the viscosity of the tar sands when it's there? Does it become more tacky? Does it become less visible? What are the characteristics? Because this is new to us. We've seen what it does when it's hot. So we wanted to really investigate and see what goes on when it's cold. And we really found some quite disturbing
Interesting
results. In one case, right here, we moved a boom. You can see the thickness of the ice. You can actually, at the bottom, beside that boom, is nothing but oil sheen underneath the boom. So the boom right there is not doing its job. It's not absorbing what it's supposed to be absorbing. You can go to the next picture.
This was the hole we broke in right by that airboat. We had broken about a foot, 5 foot square block. Some of it are already broken through, an area that was already broken through. We just opened it up a little bit more. We left it there for about a couple of minutes. Sheen started rising to the surface, and then we stirred the bottom. I knew, I had spoken with people that are responding to the Kalamazoo spill. They're doing research on the spill in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And they are seeing some of the same things we're seeing here, where the oil is actually, because of the metal content of where the oil is coming from, out of rock formation, it is higher than your oil that comes out of Louisiana. It makes it heavier. There's a higher density in this oil than there is in the one in Louisiana. For that fact alone, after it first releases, after the first hour, a lot of the lighter, super light volatiles have already off-gassed. Well, as it gets colder, it's going to make it heavier, and it's going to make it more condensed, and it's going to sink. We stirred up the bottom, and exactly what I thought was going to happen. We stirred up the bottom, and all of this sheen started rising to the surface. And it wasn't just like, oh, it smells kind of like gas. No, like, we had to step back.
Yes, it was so potent that it could actually take your breath away. Still to this day, almost 10 months later.
This stuff had an off gas.
Not all the way, because what's happening is it's getting settled into the
sediment.
The sediment.
It's holding it under.
So I have if you'll let me for a second. I'm working on a theory with another researcher from the University of Toronto about how the dilbit or diluted bitumen, tar sands, all these other names, oil sands, whatever you want to call it, acts in response to its environmental behaviors. I believe it's mimicking dispersed oil, but not in the way it flows, where it ends up, and not into the micro scale that dispersed oil did. When you had dispersed oil in the Gulf, there were droplets you couldn't see with your own visible eye. Because the polarity hasn't been reversed with this oil, it still likes other oils, doesn't like water, as opposed to what happened in the Gulf, where it doesn't like other oils and likes water after it was dispersed. I think you're going to end up with similar consequences with the bottom of the Cove and lake areas being covered. It's the same thing that's happening in Michigan. It's still going to bond to sand, it's still going to bond to leaves, it's still going to bond to grass, animals, people. plants, whatever, but it's not going to rise up to the surface as easily, and it's gonna get spread, and it's gonna be allowed to settle inside the sediment and leach through the sediment like it did in the Gulf.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
And the longer it sits there, the further it leaches
We're
down, so
already-
the more cleaning they're actually gonna have to do
Right.
to try and recover.
They're gonna have to go about
At least-
7 feet to 10 feet to get all of that oil out. And they're gonna have to do it methodically. There's no way they're gonna be able to get it all out.
Is that 7 to 10 feet just in the cove, or would it be
Yeah.
along the entire path of where the oil flows?
Along
the
the
entire
entire path. And I'm not talking like just go 7 to 10 feet. I'm talking about a radius of 7 to 10 feet to get all of that out. If they do it while it's cold, if they do it while it's hot, it's gonna be a lot more complicated than that because it's gonna continually leach.
What about the wetlands? What about the
That's-
outflow from the?
The outflow from the wetlands, that's been conflicting. Because when I went out with my professor and we did a sediment test right there at the exit of the, like across from the land bridge, we didn't find any oil at all in our sediment test. Or we didn't see any sheen, we didn't see anything. But we know that the water results are coming back with oil and gas compounds way down by the dam. So it doesn't make any sense.
Have you been down
There's
to
a
Down
channel,
further to pull water.
Have you been down to Paradise?
there's
To
a,
Paradise Point, yeah, we went down to Paradise Point.
Did you find oil and sheen down there?
I found that on my own, yeah, I've seen
Okay,
it.
I started saying, it's down there too.
Yeah, it's down by
Yes.
Paradise, it's down, I mean, it's all the way
Because
down.
of the water flows.
Right, because of the
There's
old creek that
And
used
that's
to
why you're
run.
not gonna get it right
there's
there.
a channel that runs
Right.
from that earthen dam all the way
We
around.
were right in front of the dam, like you saw the pipe coming out, we
Yes.
were right there. And for whatever reason, maybe it was our equipment, we have a new piece of equipment, we're gonna go out and test out when it gets a little bit warmer, and we're gonna see what happens, but I think there's something going on there. I think it's leaching inside the sediment, and I think there's a concern with the aquifer system that's in place around Mayflower because it's so shallow that it is possible that the recharge into the aquifer is going to be polluted by the leaching into the sediment.
Correct. And just this last week, and the week after we had went to the Cove, I had noticed that there were extra booms actually in the Lake Conway side.
Oh, yeah, there's a whole bunch out
And-
there today.
In the actual first containment boom,
Yeah,
and the whole area was thick with sheen and foam that was building up on top of those
but
booms.
that's not normal, and that's concerning.
Those booms were removed about 2 days ago from the inside, the initial containment boom. You can still see daily that there is actually sheen linking into the lake.
Yeah,
So even though they say that the levels that they're finding in the lake are at extremely low levels, the issue is bioaccumulation. Plants eat the algae, other fish eat those plants. So how long can these plants and animals eat their ecology, what they're supposed to be eating, before it bioaccumulates? We eat something and then we get sick because they have had so much of it bioaccumulate in their system. That's where I think we're really running into a brick wall. They say, oh, these levels are low, but they're not taking into consideration all the different aspects that can cause these levels to become higher. You know, if you want to move to the next picture, this is one of the booms that's actually sitting on top of the ice. It cannot do anything if it's actually sitting on top of ice. But if you see all the speck marks, those are actual tar balls that are still coming to the top of the water in the cove.
go ahead. Okay, so this is a block of ice that I managed to get out of this section.
And if you can see,
There's a little bit of a sheen entrapped into the ice. The concern is that, my concern is that, did I hit something?
No,
Oh.
go ahead.
It's okay, don't worry about it. Or did I just not? I'm a little special. The concern is that there's a fracture inside this ice cube right here, and you notice the sheen's right here. Well, ice has a tendency to freeze really quickly, right? For in order these air bubbles to become all aligned like this, to be all perfectly aligned like this, to have clear ice, it has to freeze pretty dang quick. With this fracture being in the ice here, And having the sheen here makes me feel like the water, some water got inside of that after this area was frozen and this area was frozen. Any kind of residual, even small amounts of water got inside that fracture, and that's why we're seeing the sheen, because it got stuck. The water that got inside that fracture froze, and what we're seeing as a result of that is the pollutants that were in the water itself.
Correct.
So we're seeing lots of this kind of stuff. Yes, you had a question, Robert?
Probably attention to that ground streak in the ice, but
That, right, yeah,
That's a fracture.
is what?
That's
The
a
fracture.
fracture in the ice itself, where ice didn't really quite freeze solid all the way through. It kind of, it froze in kind of an odd spot, or it's just the natural way ice freezes. Sometimes it freezes and has little fractures, or.
So the it's just how it reacts with it.
The oil that was in the water infiltrated through this fracture. The water that had carried the oil froze, and that's why we can see a rainbow effect into the ice, because what was left is the oil.
There are more pictures with
Back up, if you would back up a couple pictures. Yes.
I don't know if I can.
Yeah, the other one, go to the left. Is it not working? Okay.
No, not for this one.
One more. Okay. That's your boom right there? Okay, your boom, none of those booms are gonna absorb that fluid.
No, I know that, fully aware of that, but that.
What I'm saying to you is those are all polypropylene booms.
Right.
Right.
Absorbent.
No, they're not absorbent. I keep telling you, they're not absorbent booms. A polypropylene does not absorb.
Per the
Specifications.
For the specs and
for the
the.
specifications and the EPA, everything is categorized into a absorbent,
Oh,
okay? But they're not, they're adsorbent booms. Adsorbent booms. In other words, when fluid gets in them, it will leach. And-
We said from the get-go that they're only there for show anyway,
Well, sure,
they're doing
but
nothing.
my point is this, and I'm talking because I represent the product. There's only one absorbent product on the market, and it can't, because it's an absorbent, and it does absorb, and I can show you the test with crude oil, these will never pick up any.
No.
I mean, what they'll do is they will take the solution and it will pick up some of it,
no.
but it flows right on through.
Right.
And that's the problem that you're running with anything that you put here.
Yeah, it's gonna be the same, but a big part of the problem with that is that
That's
Exxon owns the company that
That's
invented it,
correct.
so that's,
That's
we
not
run it to the.
Right.
Well, isn't their purpose like to act like a fence, like a crowd, just to?
The rubber boom is.
Yes.
But this is not.
No, that's supposed to absorb.
That is supposed to
So
absorb.
it's not because this is the gel bit,
No, it's
because
It's
the
a
good
tool.
material made by the, of the boom just won't.
Right.
Correct.
All your booms and everything that you've got in the market today is a polypropylene fill and/or composite
Okay,
product. And that's
this is
what's-
something
Go
I
ahead.
really wanna show you, sorry. I really wanna show you guys. So, here, normal air bubbles and ice. Here, these are brown bubbles inside of the ice. Now, the only thing,
Yep.
oily looking coating individual droplets of air inside of an ice cube, an ice block that we picked out. Well, that was with a phone, I think.
That was with my
That was your
camera,
camera?
just a real
Uh,
dinky camera.
We have, Genevieve and Megan have all noticed that when you go out to the Cove, we see bubbles of air rising in certain areas and we'll see sheen pop up with it. We think we just confirmed that anytime you change the compaction rate of the sediment, that it's shooting up sheen with it. And here, we saw that it got trapped. And Megan, you had, yes,
Isn't that the hydrocarbons attempts to off-gas?
To off-gas.
Yes,
that's
that's
right.
off-gas.
Okay.
it's trying to off-gas, but it
can't.
It can't.
Because it's
Frozen.
bonded with H2O, so as long as it's bonded with H2O.
This can't, this oil can't bond with H2O. It
How long
is,
after they spray it or after?
if it's been dispersed, it can. If it hasn't been dispersed, it
So
can't.
we still don't know for 100%.
Correct. I don't think it, I'm looking back at pictures and I'm looking at other material. I think there is an issue with the surface tension that the dilbit chemical that they put inside the pipeline to make it flow. I think it lowers the surface tension so much that it mimics the ribbing effect of, the sheen mimics the ribbing effect of dispersed oil.
Well, I'm asking because, I've talked to a lot of people who, there's already chemicals in the lake. It's
Right.
not clean.
Yeah,
So could that,
it could,
even
and
if
also
they haven't
compound
sprayed dispersants,
Right.
could the chemicals that are already in it?
could compound it even more, make it act like that, yeah. Yeah, it's, the dispersant, we say dispersant, but it's in a lot of stuff. Simple green is used,
Yeah.
this stuff in pesticides, all these things can act and affect this product in many different ways.
You want to go to the next picture? This is the chunk of ice that you actually were seeing the particulates in and the sheen in. I took a picture of that chunk of ice just so you could see how big that chunk of ice was that you were actually seeing inside of and seeing the sheen inside of.
Yeah,
This is
it's
another
one
hole we created. I touched the bottom of the soil 2 times. Did not go into the soil more than 2 inches, 3 inches. And this is what,
All of this is
Rose.
sheen here. And
what
then
looks
this
like
is
chunks of
oil.
ice that is
This
actually oil sheen.
Yeah.
There should be, the next picture should actually see some of the, you should see some of the tar balls.
Oh, right there?
Yeah.
You can see them down at the bottom.
There.
In the bottom
Nice.
Here.
This bottom section.
All the way around the edges of the ice.
Oh, yeah, look at that.
Yeah.
So it's still there. Yes, Robert?
I don't doubt what y'all are saying, but somebody looking at this be like, well, how do you know that's not just dirt? Did you get a chance to do any testing on it? Or
What?
anything like that?
I've got it in my kitchen, it's not dirt. I've got it in my kitchen, I took home a jar of water and a jar of ice, it's not dirt.
Yeah,
The key,
I'm not doubting what you're saying.
Robert,
What you're saying. I just want to.
The key difference
how
between
would
like
this be
stuff
different?
like this, that's, you would think maybe could be dirt or whatever, we would actually take our
Gloves.
fingers, gloves and stuff that we
And
had on,
smear it.
and we could tell the difference between dirt and oil, because, okay, we smear it, we see dirt, put it in the water, okay, it's gone. We do it with oil, it doesn't go away, it stays on the glove.
When we did this with our gloves, it became so hard to pull your actual gloves apart because it was so much thicker.
Yeah.
You were actually ripping your rubber gloves as you were pulling your hands apart
It
because
was really cold.
Yes, it was extremely cold. And I really do feel that the temperature plays a part in how hard it is, the viscosity, in the thickness, how it shows, how it smells, how it reacts. Temperatures do change chemicals quite significantly.
Yeah. I think when it warms back up, we're gonna have a big problem. And I'm not that person that's trying to be an alarmist, but the concern is now that there is no air monitoring done. The last one being done in May. The sediment samples are being done randomly. It's been 20 days since the last water test, April.
I do want to mention that I found out recently, they did find even as important as it is to monitor outside in the summer, it's going to be even more important to
Monitor
monitor
inside,
inside some of the homes.
Because it's gonna be more compounded.
They found a lot of, like in one of the homes that they actually tore down, they found a lot of arsenic.
Arsenic's being found in a lot of the water samples.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lots.
That's a good question.
Arsenic.
Arsenic occurs naturally. This is a naturally occurring substance and it's been found here before, but not at these levels that have been being found.
And not in someone's home.
Yeah.
Could it be part of the proprietary
Does it
list?
cause problems with skin?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
arsenic is
can
highly,
pretty much cause
highly poisonous.
everything. It's almost like, it's, I don't want to say it's like chemo, but it disrupts your central nervous system in that way. Like it's just extremely toxic to people.
That
But the
barium
issue
Was
with that is now you're going to have a year later, and by the time summer gets here, it's going to be a year and a half later. So you're not just going to have the toxins that we know. We're
gonna have
daughter compounds.
Right.
And there's no way to put it.
Well, and with that,
The air samples in the hall.
in one of the
Before it
houses.
was turned out with that air monitoring, and they detected arsenic, or an arsenic,
That's how they ended up.
How many test
holding it down, 'cause
wells?
they
they can't clean it.
Huh?
How many test wells are being drilled?
It wasn't so
Drilled.
much
Test wells? Not very many, I think maybe one. They haven't really done a lot of, they've gone down to the sediment maybe about, I think the max is 2.
But because you're saying this is moving, and of course, you're absolutely correct, as it gets colder, it's gonna
Hold up, so.
close along the flow, but, you know, I don't know what your overall are, but you need to start looking at test wells every so far, and so far outside the
My
boundaries.
professor and I are gonna be doing, core sampling through the whole contamination area.
Of course, I'm promoting my product.
Right.
You need to get my product and put it in there, because it's gonna, any organic substance is gonna pick it up.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to donate a little bit of the product?
Sure we can, absolutely.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Because the problem my professor and I are having is when we get it back to the lab and we clean it out, what do we do with it then? You know, it's been a problem, but,
In this picture, it's another one of those pictures
yeah.
of the holes that we created. This one, we did not mess with the soil beneath the water. This was what was visible just from breaking through the ice. This is what was visible. If you want to go to the next picture, here are tar balls. You can.
Now, right, this one here, I think that one's algae.
Nope.
No, is that, no.
Nope,
No,
those
that's not
were,
this one.
that was from the hole I created that I
Oh,
really
yeah.
messed with the bottom of the soil.
What you should do is take your rubber gloves, okay? Put white gloves over your rubber gloves, and then put your hand in the water and pull it out.
Well, we use,
the white gloves will pull in any tar balls or anything onto the surface.
Like a white cotton glove?
Yes, it'll
Okay.
pull right into it, suck it into it, and then you turn around. And you take a picture like that, and you put your glove alongside of it, it shows the differentiation.
I think I actually have a few pictures, but they're not in this slide.
Okay, you gotta put it on the next one. Next. Okay, so this is where we were. We were right here. This is the airboat that is currently still being operated to maintain the boom in the Cove and in the lake area.
What do you-
Sands Airboats is still in charge. We found,
Yeah.
well, no, I'm not gonna say that.
What you see sticking up out of the ground are actually PVC pipes with high pans tied to them to keep the animals from landing into the cove.
From what now?
They're to keep birds,
Keep birds from
animals.
landing inside the Cove.
Landing on the,
Landing on the water to not be contaminated, because it doesn't take very much oil for a bird to not be able to fly.
Not at all.
I have a question. Those pictures, I couldn't tell exactly how big those balls were.
They were,
It depended, really. I
from
mean, some
pinpoint
were
to about maybe 1 millimeter to 2 millimeters wide.
Like a BB.
Yeah, like a BB, it's about the size of a BB.
What makes a suggestion for when y'all take pictures of this kind of stuff? If you put like a penny in the frame.
No, we're gonna start doing scales from now on. I get ridiculed for that a lot.
Okay.
Now, I can go to the next question. So here's
There
that
is
sheen.
another piece
Oh, I think
of
it's okay.
ice that you can very visibly see the sheen in.
You can see it on my computer screen a whole lot better than
Yeah.
from the projector. The projector doesn't have the colors.
It almost, if you're looking at it off of a computer screen, it almost looks like a thumbprint
Yeah,
inside that ice.
multicolored.
And of course, you know, we go out there in our protective gear. We wear our waders, we wear our mud boots, we wear our rubber gloves, we wear respirators.
Orange vest.
Orange vest and hard hats.
Hard hats. The reason the orange vest and hard hats is because the only reason they're worried about us going out to the cove is due to falling tree hazards, not due to the chemicals that we're actually being exposed to.
Yeah. When the weather warms up, you will start to see a more visible presence of the oil being found in the Cove, and not only that, but by that time we've entered the long-term restoration phases of the cleanup. We should still be in response phase. This is ridiculous. We're not in response phase anymore. Not the homes, not the culverts, not the Cove, not the lake. We're in long-term restoration phase,
Or as they call remediation
long-term
phase.
remediation phase.
Yeah, with the off-gassing ditches don't off-gas.
They do, but not like
Not
this.
like we saw, not like that.
So we're in it for a long haul, but,
We're not done, we're not going anywhere. We will fight until we actually get something accomplished.
Well, I had to go somewhere. I'm staying close though.
yeah, stay close by it.
We will continue to have these meetings. I do know that we are trying to plan a 1 year. And in our hopes of having the 1 year, we're gonna have a bigger venue, hopefully more speakers. Try to draw in some attention from the college group, kids that can actually help spread the news, keep it more live stream, give it, more updates of what is going on, how we can better handle these situations, maybe possibilities of forming groups, that actually go around and speak with people along routes of these pipelines, speak to them about the disasters. I know that I've been to Washington DC right after the oil spill happened. I hand-delivered Secretary Kerry a letter asking him to come to my house. Of course, did he come? No. I'm not going to stop. I've been to Texas. I've done online conferences throughout all the routes of different pipelines that carry these types of chemicals. To let them know it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And that's what we have to work to. And we have to work for fixing these failing infrastructures if they're going to continue to use them. What I would like to see happen is we go to more economical, more environmental friendly aspects of energy, and which I know for a fact that's not going to happen overnight. No, it's not going to happen tomorrow. But if we have a bigger voice and we get more people to speak, and it's happening. It's happening in all other states.
Oh, yeah.
We just have to pull together instead of being all these single entities. We need to pull together to be one big entity to get our voice heard in a very larger spectrum. We've got to get these bigger publications that want to pay attention to it. And that is our goal and our time.
Are you on your soapbox now? Yeah.
And this is really to anyone in the room. But you guys might know already. Tuesday ran an article on the Exxon plan to, I'll call it remediate, I don't know what they call it, but Lake Conway that was submitted to the state.
Yeah.
Now, my question is when will people from the community
They don't get a chance to speak.
They don't get to see it at all?
No. The issue with that is, and I kind of wish he was still here, when they have a response or an incident like that, you go through the proper channel. Well, when Exxon submits a plan, they submit it to, I think it was ADQ. ADQ has to approve it. I handed it to you.
Without community?
Without community, right. There is no community chance to say, hey, we like this plan or we don't like this plan.
Is it possible to get it through Freedom of Information?
You can get the plan online, no problem.
But
the problem is to have the community response to the plan to say, hey, this is an issue, we don't really prefer
Well,
this.
you don't have to give them the response, you can give it to the newspaper.
Right, no, and that's what, that's
Oh, yeah.
essentially what's gonna end up having to happen.
Okay.
During the BP spill, I can't tell you, I've had about 100 people or more. We all got together and we tried to get them to stop using the dispersant stuff because friends of theirs, them were getting sick, their husbands and wives and kids were getting sick and they're still sick. But they continued on until it got to the point where Representative Markey pushed the EPA to demand them to change something. They did, BP never did it, but it has to go to that extreme point, unfortunately. And that, without help from our representatives, we don't.
Well, there was enough even in the paper's article that suggests that it's not going to be adequate. There wasn't, there were a few facts in there,
Right.
and they all suggested that they are underestimating the effects of.
Well, they underestimated the spill size, they underestimated the release time, how long it was before free flowing and all of that stuff. So that surprised me a bit, but
not me either. but
Right, you know, but,
Still, it was in the paper,
Right.
and even that, what is in there, you can tell that they're already wrong.
right. Yeah, and we have to be better about calling them out on it and finding ways to do so, and that's always difficult, you know.
That answers my question. I was hoping that, I didn't know how the process worked. I was hoping the community would have the potential of giving input straight to the state.
Yeah.
I guess not.
The only way I know how to do that would be the Attorney General's hotline, which I don't even know if it's still continued. And we're talking to Judge Dobson, and he's about as good to talk to as a brick wall, so.
Because he, going into Judge Johnson, he made the comment at a city town hall meeting that the city of Mayflower had, that it was an extremely good sign that the turkeys were coming back to the Cove.
Oh, it's so nice to see
Me
how everything's
being
back.
a nature person, in general, I really was not pleased with that. And I had to make a comment. I said, do you mean to tell me that these animals actually have enough knowledge to know that they're coming into contaminated areas? Can they read the signs that you have posted that say danger, keep out? So just because these animals are coming back doesn't necessarily mean it's a good sign. It just means they don't have the knowledge to know the difference.
I think I would ask, who's it good for? I don't think it's good for the turtle.
Right.
How do you know wildlife is right up from the ball?
So,